Hello, everyone. This is Michaelangelo Hamilton here. Hello, hello. I am live streaming today off of my personal page. We're trying to test a few things. Usually we're on the politics and stuff page, but today we have a school board candidate with us today who we are interviewing. Her name is Kyla Ivy Tedder from Polk County in Florida. Thank you so much for joining us today on this Saturday. And tell us a little bit more about yourself and the campaign that you're running.
Okay, well, hi, my name is Kayla Ivy Tedder. Sorry, slight correction there.
My bad.
And I'm running for Polk County School Board, as Michaelangelo said. I'm running to give students more representation in our school system, and I've got a lot more to my platform if you'd like to ask me about it.
Absolutely. Tell us a little bit more about, I guess, your platform and what you stand for. What differentiates you from other candidates?
Okay, yeah, sure. So the main differentiator between me and other candidates is obviously my age. Being a current high school senior, nobody else in the field has that sort of student experience behind them, or at least contemporary student experience. Uh, as far as my platform goes, one of the main things that I'd like to accomplish is countering the top-heavy administration in our school system to allow for more teacher flexibility to meet individual student needs. Ultimately, I believe that'll get students more engaged in their own education and will yield higher grades as a result.
Well, that is a very interesting campaign platform. And not only that, us young people, because I am actually the same age down here in Broward County. We have Elijah Manley who's running for school board, and it's happening all over the country. And I think we need more youth empowerment. So can you, I guess, touch a little bit on that point, and talk to us about why is it so important for the youth to be represented in government?
So it's extremely important for the youth to be represented in government because we are the future and the future is now. Our our concerns are going to be much different than older generations' concerns. For us, we're struggling with just breaking into the job force. We're struggling with post-secondary education and paying for it. And we have a lot of different challenges than the older generations might realize. And that's one of the main reasons why youth need to be represented more in government.
That is a very interesting point, and that is very true because, like, right now we have people up there who are, not really in touch and in sync with the current student population. So, talk to us about that, and talk to us about what the students in Polk County are saying about your run, and I guess about the current incumbent.
Right, so I'm not actually running against the current incumbent. The
Oh,
incumbent has served on the board for 16 years now. This is her 16th year, and she's decided to ultimately retire. She's one of two board members that have served that long thus far. So as far as what the students are saying in Polk County, especially about my race, many are very excited that a student is finally running and stepping up. I mean, in school districts across the county or across the country, apologies, you have student liaison positions which allow for more student representation and student voices to be represented. But Polk County is not one of the school systems that have that sort of position.
absolutely. I just want to add in there we have Christopher on here with us today. Thank you for joining, Christopher. I guess he touches upon, and his point of view is that, students are very intelligent, especially down here in Broward County. We have the Stoneman Douglas students who are fighting for gun reform after what happened here, unfortunately. And thank you to everyone who stands in solidarity with them. And, our school, did a walkout as well, MacArthur High School in Hollywood. But, it is a very touchy topic for some people, I guess. So, I guess talk to us a little bit about your thoughts on the issue and how we can, affect change. And I guess a little bit about like the current political structure with campaign contributions and what makes your campaign unique.
Okay, So you kind of just threw a lot of stuff at me. So
Yeah, I guess but you can chop that up however you like.
Okay, I'm probably gonna miss a few points here, but I'll touch on what I can remember. So, as far as the tragedy in Parkland, it's clear that more needs to be done about student safety, and I'm actually one of the students personally organizing a walkout in my county to stand in solidarity with these students. So I'm very invested in what's going on around the Parkland tragedy. And from the perspective of a potential school board member, what I believe needs to happen is our school district needs to work with other school districts throughout the state to better effectively lobby the state legislature for more equitable funding. Polk County specifically, we're funded 64th out of 67 counties, and yet we're one of the largest, which doesn't seem right if you look at the balance there. So I believe that we could be better lobbying for equitable funding, and some of that funding should be contributed towards school safety, especially with the fear our students have nowadays.
That's a very important, point there. So, do you mind going over that number one more time? It was a crazy number.
Yes.
Do you mind going over that one more time?
64th out of 67th in funding.
In funding, and how many students are in your general district?
About 100,000, I want to say.
So it's up there between different counties. Is that what the point you were trying to make for our viewers?
Right. So it's a large county, and as such, it has a lot of funding needs, but we're funded extremely low on the totem pole.
So all the way on the bottom almost. Okay, so I guess that's a really good question to go on. Why did it get that way over there?
Honestly, I'm not entirely sure how it got that way to begin with, but it's clear that something needs to change.
Oh, well, that's definitely true. I mean, and we have candidates who are running to have that change, and that's what I hear a lot from our community too. So, I guess talk to us about a little bit more about your platform. Yeah, I heard you touch upon standardized testing. So, tell us your opinions on standardized testing.
That's a loaded question. As a student who's sat through those ridiculous tests before, and as someone who has family that have struggled because of those tests and have lost their faith in education because of those tests, I'm coming from the perspective of I believe that Polk County should eliminate all district standardized testing. It's extremely redundant to the state testing and doesn't need to exist. As far as the state testing goes, you can make an argument that it can be used as a measure of student progress. That's an argument that can be made, but I don't think it should be the end all be all measure of student progress. It measures one aspect of student progress, but taking a standardized exam in math is not going to tell you how well I actually understand the material, especially a multiple choice test. And the same goes for English or any other subject. It's not going to tell you how well I actually perform in those subjects accurately. I also don't believe that it should contribute towards student grades or towards teacher evaluation scores. I mean, teachers don't really have any control over whether or not their students are good test takers, and they shouldn't have to spend valuable time teaching students how to take a test.
That's a very important point to touch upon, those teacher evaluations. So I guess go a little bit into how does that work over there? Do they just sit there and write notes, or what's the protocol there for that usually?
So with teacher evaluations, a couple components go into it, and I don't remember how heavily each component is weighed. I just know the individual components. There's the formal evaluation, in which the administration will tell the teacher, hey, send us your lesson plan for the day. We plan on stopping in on Friday, on Wednesday. So send us what you plan to do, and we'll be there to evaluate you. Then there's also kind of informal observations where they just pop in, maybe not even for the whole class, just for 15 minutes or so. Just pop in, watch, the instructor, and then pop back out. And then there's also obviously the standardized tests that go into the score as well.
Oh, okay, so it's like all of different things combined, essentially.
Yes.
Okay, and so essentially the point that I guess you're trying to like emphasize to our viewers about, I guess, standardized testing, like, or one of the points in your platform, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that like standardized testing impedes, both parties, like both like the student and the teacher, because they can't know for sure if they're going to pass or not, and it takes valuable time and resources and maybe AK money to get the proper steps for you to study and pass.
Yeah, no, that's a really good way of putting it. It does impede on both parties. In fact, I did the math, and if you track a student entering our public system from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade, they will spend about 180 days testing. That's assuming each test takes up a full day, and that doesn't factor in AP exams. It doesn't factor in individual teachers' finals. It doesn't factor in SATs and ACTs. That's just district and state level examinations. It doesn't even that number doesn't even include the number of standardized tests that students with disabilities have to endure.
So that 180 figure is not even including the SAT testing sometimes and the AP testing.
Not.
So what do you think about those figures? Like, how do you think that should be paid, I guess, is the question.
What do you mean?
I mean, okay, for instance, like certain schools, they'll look at your current grade in the class, at least here in Broward, or in my school. They will look at your grade in the class, and then they would decide, okay, it looks like you're doing good in the class. We'll pay for your test. And then if other kids don't do well in the class, depending on what well means, they won't pay for your test. So
that's not how it works in Polk at all. That's kind of wild. I've never heard of that. No,
I guess we're messed up. We're Broward, so we're all messed up.
Broward's got issues. Whoa. No, but in Polk County, if you enter an AP class, you have to sign a contract at the beginning of the year, and that's to state that you will stay in the course for the remainder of the year. Even if you want to drop out of it, you can't. And that also means that you're going to take the AP test. In fact, if you choose not to take the AP test, you lose the weighted credit for the AP course. But they pay for everyone's tests, even if you have a 0 in the class.
Okay. So I guess what I'm wondering here, I guess let's go back a little bit about the funding. How much do you think, or I'm not sure if you know the exact figure, but how much is like currently allocated for the district itself? Like the county, I guess, the county district?
Yeah, I don't have that figure on hand, but it's a big number. It's a lot. One sec.
Yeah, no problem, because like the reason why I was kind of asking is because it's kind of weird how in Broward we don't really pay for everybody, but we have a $6 billion budget.
Oh yeah, our budget is not at all $6 billion. It is not at all.
So I mean, we're one of the largest in the nation, but like, where's the money being spent at? Like, that's what
that is kind of strange, especially if you're not paying for everybody's AP tests.
Yeah, that's kind of a big problem. And then on top of that, our teachers here are not being paid well. So let's go over to, I guess, the teaching. Okay. What is your position on raising the wages for teachers, or what is your position on teacher pay?
So teachers' wages should definitely be increased, for sure. Just as from the perspective of a student sitting in those classes, I know exactly what all of my teachers go through every single day, and I would not want to trade places, to be quite honest. So I believe that they deserve better pay. The question at hand, however, is how do we make that happen with our budget? So what the school district did recently was they lowered the reserve requirement from 5% to 4% to give teachers an increase in pay. But that still isn't really enough. That's not as much as they deserve to get. So then the question becomes, again, how do you effectively lobby the state legislature for more funding? Because otherwise we're going to have to cut programs that benefit kids in order to pay teachers better. And we've already, cut enough stuff without having to go further in.
I see. So it's like a budget issue as well. But you said you're in favor of generally increasing, teacher pay. Is there any specific numbers you have or a platform you're working on increasing the pay currently? By any
I
chance?
don't have a specific number, and it gets more complicated when you get into, well, how many years has the teacher been teaching? Well, what's their highest degree of education? But as a whole, I believe that their pay needs to be increased, and not just by $100 or so here and there either, but by a substantial amount.
Oh, okay. Well, that's definitely, very true. Like, for instance, down here, I definitely see what you're saying. Essentially, I'm a singer as well down here in Broward, and one of the teachers that are really important in my life, I guess, is Sarah Beauchamp. She's part of the debate team down here, and she does a lot for, like, everything as far as debate and all of the different stuff that she does. And yeah, she doesn't like not just her, because I don't want to put anyone in a situation like that. But like any teacher, I guess what I'm trying to say is they're not getting paid well, and they're expected to do certain stuff. And I guess let's go back a little bit on the gun issue, and let's get your opinion on whether or not, like, should teachers be able to have guns in their classrooms, and if like so, what would you believe is the best way to go about doing that? If you do, and if not, explain why.
No. Plainly, no. Not at all. No. The only people who should have guns, especially around children, are those specialized to do so, which are the school resource officers. Now, if a teacher is trained to use a gun in other circumstances, that's not the same thing as having a gun around children. That is not the same thing as being able to defend yourself in a classroom against potentially another child. It's not the same whatsoever. And if we do decide to arm teachers, the question then becomes, how do we ensure that gun is only used by that teacher? How do we ensure that teacher doesn't reach a breaking point? How do we ensure that children can't get their hands on a gun? And how do we ensure classroom safety overall with a gun in the classroom?
That is a very interesting point of view. I hear that point of view a lot, actually. But I was just asking because there's people out there who have the point of view saying that, teachers, should have a gun, and if I was the teacher, I would want a gun. But it does come down to what you're saying, and you're putting a lot of trust in that teacher, and not only that, they have other obligations, right?
Yeah. I love my teachers. I would not want to put a gun in any one of their hands. At least not in the classroom environment.
That's true. And, it's not supposed to be that way. I guess that's where it all comes down to. It's not supposed to be that way. We shouldn't have to conform. Oh, can you still hear me?
I can hear you.
I thought, I was looking on the other side, but I guess you're still working on my side. So I guess the point I was trying to make, speaking with you here as well, is that, like, some people, believe that they should have guns. But, like, in general, when you really look at the situation, I mean, anyone could snap, any student, if the teacher's looking away, writing a lesson. I mean, it's just as bad, if not worse.
So what I do believe needs to happen is we need to take more proactive measures to prevent this from happening to begin with, so it doesn't get to the point where the teacher needs to be armed in the first place. So that means increasing school safety. That means helping students that are struggling with being bullied and with bullying others, because we've seen with the Parkland tragedy that the shooter was somebody that had notable issues. And if we put in a better support system for students and allow students to report other students anonymously, then we can avoid a lot of these problems to begin with.
And that's very important as well, I guess, prevention. And I'm not going to, I guess, like go into it much because I don't know like the specifics. Because, okay, so some people down here say the sheriff office and the sheriff says, we did everything by protocol. You know, we could have done a lot of things better, but then there's sources saying otherwise. So it really comes down to, and I always hear otherwise sources as well saying things negatively of the BSO and the progressives as well. Um, and it really comes down to how much can we trust like the BSO, because like sometimes they don't honor their oath. You know what I'm saying? Like, for example, that school resource officer who just standing there and held that position. We pay you to go in and neutralize the target. I mean, you know, it comes down to that, and it's quite upsetting, to be honest. And a lot of students I've spoke to and encountered with have the same sentiment that, you know, that's also a major issue as well. But the main issue is also the guns, because, you know, going back, the problem came a long time before us, like the 40s and whatnot, like 49s around there, and it just got worse. And we haven't changed our gun laws to keep up to date much. So unfortunately, that's what happens. So I guess let's go ahead and touch a little bit about like your background, because I guess we haven't really touched about that. So tell our viewers here more about you, and about like the position you're running for a little bit more, and what you intend to do if elected.
Sure. So, a bit about my background. I'm a current high school senior. I'm also dual enrolled at the local college. So, by credit hour, I'm also a college sophomore. Uh, I've been an active part of my community, I like to say, since, well, about 2015, around the 2016 election. Started getting heavily involved in the local community. And now I've decided to run for Polk County School Board to give students representation in our government and in their school system and their education. So the position I'm running for is one of 7 seats. It's all divided into different districts. So I'm running for the District 3 seat. And the entire county votes on every seat, no matter what district they live in. So it's a countywide race. Any other things I should touch on?
Sure. I mean, that's a great start there. I guess, is there anyone else running in this race?
There's 5 people in my race.
Oh my, that's a nice little race there. Okay.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about that is, if you look back at the school board race history, sort of, a lot of the races have gone uncontested in the past, or they've only had one opponent. So it's kind of interesting that my race has attracted 5 people, but they have been heating up since the 2016 election. I mean, we saw last year there was a race with 4 people in it, a race with 3 people, and so now there's a race with 5 people this year. It happens to be mine.
It just happens to be yours, right? In this election, yeah.
Right.
It just works out perfectly, right?
Yeah.
So
Fun.
I guess tell us a little bit more, I guess, about how people can support you. What is your website, your social media, and give us like a little bit of a closing statement, I guess, and tell us like what got you into politics, and if possible, if you would like to touch upon this, who did you support in the 2016 election?
Okay. I am not at all going to touch on who I supported in the 2016 election, but I will talk about what got me into politics, because I like to think it's kind of an interesting story. So, when I was about 8 years old, Obama was being inaugurated. It was back in 2008, and the entire elementary school was taken into this big area with a giant screen and everything, and we watched Obama's inauguration, because, you know, it was a historic moment and all of that. So I'm sitting there, and I'm looking up at the screen, and I notice everybody around me has essentially fallen asleep 15 minutes in. 15 minutes in, everyone's asleep but me and the teachers, of course. And I'm staring up at the screen, and I told myself at 8 years old, mind you, I'm gonna be there one day. Whether that's as a spectator or being inaugurated, we'll see. But I decided I'm gonna be there one day. And that's sort of what got me interested in politics, was that exposure at a young age. And then I came home to my dad that day, and we started actually talking about politics, which is something I'd never done with him before. And we were sitting there watching, I believe it was CNN or something, and he was, commenting on history and so on. And I started having those discussions regularly with my parents. And then by the time 2016 rolled around, I decided, to jump into politics and actually finally get involved myself, because it was one thing discussing it every day, but it was another to actively decide to participate in it.
So that's interesting. So I guess it's fair to say that, like, at a young age, that, like, the exposure, motivated you to run for political office, especially during the Obama campaign. So I guess I could maybe ask you, like, after Obama, like, what happened after Obama in your, like, political ideology? Has that changed? Has it not changed? Just for our viewers to have some sort of context.
Well, my political ideology actually shifted entirely within the course of the 8 years between Obama's initial inauguration, to the 2016 election. And I don't want to say parties or anything, and I'm legally not allowed to say what party I am, but my political ideology went from one side of the spectrum to the other.
Okay, I do understand that too, because some candidates can't say it because they're, like, non-affiliated candidates. Makes sense.
Yes, it's a nonpartisan race. I'd love to be able to say parties, and I believe that would add a lot of clarity, but I can't.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's totally respectable, because you don't want to get that fine.
Yeah,
I'm sure there's a big fine associated with that.
Yeah,
so,
geez. So you had asked about social media and website and stuff?
Sure. Tell us, our viewers, how we can learn more about you, support you, if our viewers decide, and tell us all about that good stuff and websiting and stuff.
Yeah, sure. So I've got a Facebook page, Kayla Tedder. I've also got my personal Facebook page, which is Kayla Ivy Tedder, not to be confused. And then I've got my website, which is KaylaTedder.com. That's KaylaTedder.com.
Well, everyone who would like to learn more and like her page and donate $1, $5, $100, whatever it is, as long as there is the limit, guys. Please.
You're better at doing the fundraising ask than I am. Congratulations.
I mean, over the years, I kind of, like, had a fundraising, but, like, it didn't really work out in the long run. But, I mean, it's true, because I'm sure you're going to have to raise some sort of capital to pay for material, your website. I'm sure you have somehow. A very good website, by the way.
Thank you.
Yes. So, that is a very good point, and you should run with that ask, and I hope you do well. We'll check in with you. And actually, when is your election?
So the election is, the primary is August 28th, and then the top two vote getters from August go to the election November 6th.
Okay, so there's a primary. So you're a non-affiliated candidate. Is other candidates non-affiliated? I guess that's what I'm
It's an entirely nonpartisan race. It works kind of as a runoff system. So the primary is all 5 people, and then the top 2 vote getters go to November.
Okay, so we hope that you are in the top 2, and we will love to, touch upon you here and see how you're doing. So thank you so much for joining. I greatly appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to do an interview with us, and have a great one.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks. Have a nice day.